Let us start covering ground. Okay, so today's topic is we're going to go through various halachas of Halachas Pesach. We're going to discuss preparing for Pesach, some halachas of Pesach Seder. We have till 11:15. I'm going to talk fast. We'll move along. If anybody has a question that they have in their personal home, please feel free to ask me afterwards. If anybody has a question on what we're actually saying, so I'm not clarifying properly, please ask me during the class. Okay, if we have time, we'll see if we will, then we will also try to touch on some of the halachas of Chol HaMoed, which is an overlooked area of halacha when it comes to Yom Tov. Okay, so number one, very important halacha, and this is going to be a tender chiddush, that this is an integral part of Hilchos Yom Tov, and that is Derachah Darachinayam, that on one hand, as we say every year, the ways of the Torah are pleasant, so including Hilchos Pesach, is there must be pleasantness and a geschmack and an excitement for the upcoming Yom Tov as opposed to dread and fear that it's not being right. Okay, the halakha is supposed to be pleasant for us. At the same time, Yisrael Kedoshim Heim. We as Yidden are holy people, and we want to do the Ratzon Hashem. And the Ratzon Hashem is to get rid of every kazayas of chametz, and if it's a beria, if it's the way it's created, even if it's smaller than a kazayas, for example, a Cheerio, even though it's smaller than that Cheerio, it comes over here, front seats. That's it. For example, when you come late, you gotta sit back seats. Yeah. And I get stuck all the way up front. Okay, so we want to do whatever, that the Yisrael Kedoshim, we got to make sure that we're keeping all the mitzvahs properly and in line, nothing to talk about. At the same time, it's got to be done pleasant. All right, so here we go. So as a general rule, it is smart, it is wise to have separate utensils for Pesach and the rest of the year, but it's not absolutely required. So a person is able to kasher a lot of their vessels. Things that are metal, for example. According to some poskim, glass is not even porous. Real glass is not going to be porous, and you could say maybe some types of glass are not even chametz, but as a rule, it's always better to have separate utensils as much as is possible. If it's not reasonable because of the cost, okay, so then if you have any questions about how to go through the kashering process, or if something needs to be kashered, or maybe it can't be kashered, then one has to ask their own shayla. All right, now how do we kasher? Let's start going through the various parts of the kitchen. A gas stovetop. So a classic, what we call it, a range with a flame. How do we kasher the actual range? Now the reason why we're going after the range is because sometimes things spill onto that range, and those things can become chametz, and then if it's wet, it can get back into the pot, going back up. So we want to clean the top of the gas range. How do you kasher it? So the best way to kasher it is by taking a pot that's the widest pot you could find in your house, because you didn't use anything wider than that if it's the widest one in your house. Hopefully it'll cover enough of an area of the grate. You put water in it so the pot doesn't get ruined. Put the flame on high for 15 minutes. All done. Finito. Okay? Now the fire came. It burnt there for 15 minutes. It did libun. It burnt out anything that was possibly there. The reason why we're going for the widest pot is because we want the fire to be able to spread out as wide as possible. Obviously put the flame on the highest as well. What about the oven itself? So yeah.
You have 5 burners.
Yeah. Each one.
So you have to do a separate with the pot.
To do it all at once, or do each one?
And that kashers the burner also?
Yes.
Not the burner.
Yeah, technically it'll kasher the grate as well. Correct. Some people stick it in the oven, but that's a good way of kashering the grate. Yeah. Okay, so you do it on all 5, Rebbetzin.
Yeah. Taking a blood, wouldn't that be easier?
If you have one, I don't have one.
Oh, I've got a metal blech.
If anyone's got a wide, instead of a pot, a very wide metal blech, keep all your flames on high, of course that'll do the trick just as much. Okay, what about the oven itself? So if a person has self-clean, that is great. Now keep in mind that self-clean does not need to wait 24 hours. Okay, because you're doing libun gomer. When you're doing libun gomer, you do not need to wait 24 hours before a self-clean on an oven. However, if a person is not using self-clean, either the oven's not possible to do a self-clean, or some people think that it's going to break their oven. There are people that they did all this sort of research online. They don't like the whole self-clean idea. So then one is obligated to wait 24 hours. You scrub down the oven, get any sort of chametz out, wait 24 hours, put it on the highest possible temperature for the oven. Generally it's going to be 550 if you don't have self-clean, and you keep it there for a full hour on the highest temperature. So the highest temperature, again, sometimes it'll take 10 minutes or so for it to get up to 550, okay, depending on the strength of the oven, sometimes less, sometimes more. At 550, we want it to be there for an hour, and the oven is now clean. The knobs as well, since they're a high touch point, they don't need to be kashered in high heat, but they should be taken off and washed in the sink and scrubbed down because they're a high touch point. Okay, now if a person has stainless steel sinks, yeah,
If you're, then there was some like schmutz in there, and the self-cleaning didn't really get this.
spray it.
So you should spray it and then.
Spray it. Once you spray it, it's not chametz anymore because it's not fit for consumption. Stainless steel sinks, which is the ideal sink to have when it comes to koshering. So how do we kosher these sinks? So similar to what we said, if you're not going to self-clean the oven, we're going to wait 24 hours because we're going to kosher with hagala. Now the 24 hours of waiting means we're waiting from chametz. Some people don't realize this. Some homes we're trying to be machmir as well. So my wife is machmir that nobody uses the sink for 24 hours. La halacha, what she's doing is fine. You saw kedashim him. Now la halacha, if somebody uses water in the sink within the 24 hours, there's no problem. We just don't use chametz in the sink. So let's say you thought nobody's going to use it for 24 hours, and now somebody came and turned it on. Oh, I got to restart 24 hours. No, you don't. It's fine. There's water in there. Shalom al Yisrael. Once the 24 hours without chametz is up, we take a pot of boiling water. It could be a kettle or a pot. We pour it over each spot in the sink. Now the sink should start out dry. Now what's going to practically happen is you're going to start pouring, and it's going to hit one part of the sink and start spreading to the other part without it going directly from the pot. It's fine, you don't need to go crazy about it, but the water directly from the pot, even though the water spread out, should go straight from the pot onto each spot. Okay, so we're aiming to take that boiling water and we're going to carry it carefully around the sink. As I say every year, don't make the mistake that I made the first time I kosher in my kitchen. I wore Crocs. Bad idea. I ended up with some very nice round marks on my toes. It does splash. Okay, so be careful. Also, people who wear glasses, all of a sudden it comes up into our eyes, and I can't see what's going on. Right, so be careful with that as well. It's just some tips of the trade, but we want to nail every spot. Go ahead.
So when you're doing the sides, and you pour and
Yeah.
you hit the top of the side and it flows down. So the parts where it flows down is also considered hagala?
Correct, but you want to try to hit those spots directly as much as you can. You want to try to splash it there. Okay, now, people use towels, put towels around to keep it, whatever's going to work. Whatever's going to work for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a suggestion, because when my punctures, so sometimes like you can't take the whole pot and do this.
Yeah.
But he'll put something into it, like a ladle, and he leaves it in there for a few seconds, and then so it becomes like part of the TV show there.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. The interesting idea that Rebbetzin Zephyr is bringing up is that if you have it's not called a boiling pot, but a metal
Ladle.
a ladle, but they have these big ladles that, what are they called? No, and I need a better vocabulary as a yeshiva guy.
Ladle. Metal ladle.
No, not a ladle. I'm looking for a better. Not a scooper. It's a pot. To me, it looks like a ladle, but it's really a pot.
Oh, right. It's a disher.
No.
It's called a disher.
A disher, yeah, but I'm thinking something. Okay, you like fry things in there. I don't know. Okay, you got what I'm saying. But you're saying you keep it in there. That itself gets very hot. It could become a kli rishon, and it's easier to pour around. That's a very good idea. Okay, that would work.
Remington,
Yes,
the pot you're using, Pesach or hummus pot?
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't
So you could use a kettle. I mean, it's like a tea
Yes, you can use a kettle. Okay. Okay. If someone can unscrew parts of the sink and put it directly in, Shalom al Yisrael, that's great. But otherwise, pouring over those parts also will suffice. If some people have porcelain sinks, they're a lot less common nowadays. It's a little more complicated. But those who do kosher porcelain sinks will do this koshering process 3 times. You go over it 3 times, and then they still put an insert to cover it, but at least you know that there's no real chametz that's sitting there. Okay, microwaves are interesting. First of all, microwaves nowadays are not that expensive. To get like a small, inexpensive microwave, usually you can get one for about $30, $40, according to my understanding. So ideally, if a person can have a separate microwave for Pesach, that would be ideal. But if it's absolutely necessary to use a microwave, then the way to kosher a microwave is the same way you do if you're going to a hotel and you want to kosher from non-kosher to kosher, and that is, it's necessary to wait 24 hours from the last previous use. You have it scrubbed down. You take a cup, a foam cup, a microwavable cup, put the microwave on high, let it steam for, I've heard anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Let it steam out, nail the walls, boom, the microwave is now kosher for Pesach. Now the minhag is generally not to kosher glass items, so things that are glass we tend to refrain from, and the reason for that is that glass items in heat will break, and therefore Chazal are not happy with trying to kosher it, because people are going to, as you're koshering, you're like, oh, I don't know if I should do this right. If I do it right, one more degree might break. The things that are easily breakable, we try to refrain from koshering. Now, even though we usually use the word koshering when it comes to heat, like koshering your oven, koshering your counters, koshering when you go through the halachas of kosher and tarugas and so on and so forth, there's also this idea of with cold. Okay? So when a person scrubs down their refrigerator, it's actually koshering your refrigerator. Alright? Even though we're not using heat, and it's not like, oh, I'm just cleaning it. Okay? But no, I'm using cold, and I'm wiping down the shelves of my refrigerator. So a refrigerator needs to be emptied out and scrubbed down. A freezer also should be emptied out and scrubbed down. That is a type of koshering. There are those who have there's a common minhag that's found in a lot of homes to line the shelves as well. It is not absolutely necessary kashrus-wise, and there are some of the newer fridges and freezers, they strongly recommend against lining the shelves because of airflow, and it's going to come to break it up. A person doesn't need to take a loss. It's an extra chumrah, we'll call it, that's a minhag that some people have. Again, it's not absolutely necessary, so if it will ruin one's fridge and freezer, you do not need to line the shelves. However, one thing to keep in mind for a fridge and freezer is very often there's chametz in the cracks that are going to sit there. So if you're not going to line it and cover it, make sure that, take a toothpick or something of that sort and go through the cracks to knock out any chametz. Some people have countertops that could be kosher. Some people have countertops that, if it's like complete stone, some people have countertops that are not kosher. If it's not kosher, then we just cover it up. And the way to kosher the countertops, if a person has stone, would be similar to what we expressed by the sinks. Some people recently have come up with this fantastic idea of using clothing steamers, where the water gets boiled up in the steamer and then you use it on the countertop. The problem is, Rabbi Heinemann from the Star K, he's expert in everything electricity-wise and degrees and all that stuff. He says it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They came out with a few that might work, but one's called a volcano or something. But it's not lechatchila. It's not lechatchila. It doesn't really work. And the reason is that by most of the steamers, the water gets boiled inside, but it only comes out as steam. The steam coming out is not hot enough. The water gets hot enough, but the steam is not hot enough. Okay? So since it's not the water inside the steamer that's koshering, you're relying on the steam itself. That would be no good. If a person doesn't want to pour water, however, one way to possibly do it is make a little lip around your countertop, pour some water down. You could take an iron or something and then boil it up directly on the counter if you want to do it that way because you're nervous about a mess. Might be a bigger ASIC. I find that one of the easiest things to do is just cover them up. But everybody's got their own way, their own style. And by the way, covering is not about seeing. As long as you clean down, it's seeing. So, for example, let's say some people like their countertops, or they like keeping the look of their kitchen. When I was a younger kid than I am now, my mother, nowadays we have the throwing out plastics that you lay out on top of a Shabbos table, or when you're working. They used to have thick ones that were reusable. Okay, those things were like I don't know, 1/8 of an inch thick, or like a thick plastic. So my wife likes using those on our counters. So we buy, Joanne Olav Shalom. I don't think it's around anymore. But you go to a fabric store and you buy these thick plastics. They're better than they're thicker and they're better than the regular coverings. But they're pretty and they keep the look of the kitchen. If some people want to keep the look of the kitchen, you don't feel like you have tinfoil everywhere, and you just tape it around the lip, and that's also a way to kosher the counters. Okay, to keep it covered. Costco has
like a heavy plastic roll.
Interesting, like this.
The 2
See-through.
milliliters. 2 milliliter plastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thick painters.
But also, like a thick, cool. Okay, very good.
So Rabbi,
Public service announcement.
If you have the 2 milliliter, let's say, the real thick plastic, so you don't have to pour hot water on.
No, you're not koshering because that's your new counter. You have a new counter now. Okay. Now, all areas that are not reachable is very common. There's cracks, things that go on. So all areas that are unreachable. Let's say at some homes they'll pull the fridge out, they'll pull the oven out. What if I'm home by myself? I'm not strong enough to do this, and I can't start hiring a whole group of high school kids that are raising money for their graduation trip to start pulling out my ovens and my freezers. So the halacha is you take a bleach spray and you make it not roy lachilas kalav. You make it look no longer fit for that it's edible. And it's any area that's unreachable, we spray with bleach, and it's no longer chametz. It is okay. There's an interesting shot that comes up with high chairs. Whether you need a new cover for a high chair, the place can say you generally do not, because people don't put hot food in front of their babies. not such a great idea. And if you do, it's not going to be, you're not going to put like hot things directly onto, usually it'll be on a plate or something else, if ever. So there's really, the Paiskim aren't so concerned about there ever being something that was Yad Seiledes by, that was hot enough for it to go into the high chair covering, and therefore we are lenient on high chair. However, practically speaking, most people will still put a cover on it as a chumrah. You put a little plastic or some sort of covering on it. Silverware should be, So silverware could be kosher. It's straight metal. Okay, so the way to kosher, you put it in a pot, take tongs, whatever it is, in, out, beautiful. And it's interesting that as far as tablecloths, there's no problem using the same tablecloths during the year for Pesach, because you cleaned it in your washing machine. There's not going to be any chametz in there. So technically, if a person has a unique scenario where they have like a special tablecloth they only use, with a certain look in a certain place, and then I got this crushed velvet Moab thing, and it's going to go perfectly with my Pesach setting, and but I did use it on Shavuos last year, right? I don't know, and it's only one that fits this table, so do I need to get a new one for Pesach? No, you could use it, it's clean, there's nothing, you're allowed to use that same tablecloth. However, practically speaking, again, Yisrael Kedoshim Him, it is common that people do have separate tablecloths that they do for Pesach, but when there's a need, and it's a good Pesach, right, to spend the money on, but when there's a need, one would be allowed to, I'm saying when there's a need, I'm not even saying lahalacha. It's completely mutter to use the same, okay? But as a chumrah, we keep separate tablecloths. Okay, that's a general overview of how we're all going to be koshering for Pesach, and now we're going to get into bedigas chametz. What are we looking for when we're searching for chametz? What we're really looking for, the halacha, is any chametz that's the size of a kezayis, size of an olive. However, if it's made to be smaller, like we said in the beginning, for example, a Cheerio, a soup nut, that also needs to be searched out, because the sheer kezayis, size of a kezayis, is what gives something chashivas, gives it importance. When something's made to be smaller, it already has its own chashivas. It's chashuv in and of itself. It's made to be that small. Okay? Like go to a fancy restaurant, you can walk out a lot more hungry than you walk into a fast food place, right? Spend more, but now they gave me 2 pieces of lettuce, right? Now you got to go to the fast food place after the fancy place because you're still hungry. But it's made to be small. So that's what it's meant. You know what you're getting into. So the halacha, that's what we're searching out. Anything that's made small, anything that's bigger than a kezayis, that's the halacha. However, again, the custom is that we search as carefully as possible for any tiny crumb of chametz. Okay, outside of the kitchen, the average size home. And I love when people give like shiurim, because people get very nervous. I find in certain areas of halacha, preparing for mikvah, I think people, they hear numbers and you feel like that's the halacha. I'm going to say something, it's not a halacha. This is a recommendation that I got this Messiah in the Tanda family. You ready? Here we go. Outside of the kitchen, an average sized home needs 4 hours of looking for chametz. That's what okay? My mother would say, if you're cleaning more and you're cleaning for dust, don't blame Pesach. Not Pesach's fault. But you look around your house, an average size house, you look around your house, you know where chametz is usually brought, you search it out, you sweep it out, you're focused, you put in a good 4 hours, there's not going to be chametz.
4 hours. Cleaning?
Separate from the kitchen. Yeah, cleaning for Pesach. An average size home with maybe a couple kids running around. Now, nowadays, that's the kitchen itself depends. Everybody's kitchen's different, okay? But outside the kitchen, again, it's not this big, huge monster that is, when I was speaking to some of the Olam last week, when I mentioned this, like everybody's house is different, and nobody really cares much about what everybody else is up to. There's this thing amongst like younger families, people start preparing, some women are cooking 3 weeks before Pesach, and everybody else starts getting nervous. Everybody else is getting nervous. Oh, I'm so behind because my sister finished for Pesach Hanukkah time. So everybody else is behind. That works for you, it works for me. And they need this, and I need this. The same way my marriage isn't your marriage, and my friends aren't your friends. My getting ready for Pesach is not your getting ready for Pesach, and the way I prepare is not the way. I shouldn't feel stressed out just because somebody else is doing it any differently than me. Nowadays, we clean the house before B'dikas Chametz. It used to be B'dikas Chametz. You know what they did? They cleaned the house the night of B'dikas Chametz. They went searching for chametz around the house, which we're doing already 2 weeks before. So says Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky in Kaivetz Halachas, he says, nowadays when we do B'dikas Chametz, you don't need as as deep of a search as they used to do in every last spot, because you know you cleaned it. I know I went through that shelf, I know I went through that drawer, I know I went to that area. There ain't no chametz there. Okay, we put up the sign already, big smiley face instead of the frown that they used to have, because now we're better with our chinuch. Right? It used to be keep chametz out or you got a patch, right? And now we put it up a big smiley face, clean for Pesach, right? And then it's all clean and beautiful. Okay, so the kids chop that, and we're ready to roll. So we know it's been cleaned. However, what are we doing during B'dikas Chametz? Says Reb Shmuel, we're may live and be well, that we're still required to look over all the areas. So it's a general overlook. I'm going back into that spot and just scanning and making sure, right? A quick scan, making sure no chametz was brought back in there, and that's the proper way to do it. Okay, now should I use a feather and a candle or should I use a flashlight? Says Shmuel Kamenetsky, anybody, I'm going to guess, in this room who's walking around with a feather and a candle, you're going to spend a half hour to an hour of B'dikas Chametz making sure you don't catch your drapes on fire. You're not looking for chametz. Now you're like, oh no. Right? I never did this before. It's been a year since I tried this, right? So says Shmuel, you're not doing B'dikas Chametz with a feather and a candle. The way to do B'dikas Chametz is with a flashlight. That's the way to do B'dikas Chametz. However, he says, since the minhag in Klal Yisrael is to use a candle, and that's what it says in La'or Haner, that's the expression of the Gemara, and that's what we say in Halacha. The proper way to do it is we make the bracha before we start, light a candle, search for a minute, blow out the candle, take your flashlight, and then you'll do a proper B'dika. There's no concern about starting a fire. And a proof to this, by the way, is, Halacha, you're not allowed to use a torch. You'd think use a torch for B'dikas Chametz to get a bigger light. Right? But it says in Halacha, you're not allowed to use a torch. Why? Because you're nervous that you're going to, the whole house is going to catch on fire. So you got to use a little candle, which people are used to using. But nowadays we don't use a candle. Says the Shmuel, don't use a candle. Don't do it. If you don't know how to use it, don't do it.
So we can just dispense with the candle altogether.
Correct. But he says to keep the minhag, make the bracha, light a candle, search a little bit, and use a flashlight. If you want to. But again, his psak is lechatchila. You don't have to do that. You do not have to do that. Some people, it's not going to feel like B'dikas Chametz if they walk around with an LED flashlight. You know, okay. All right. Now, all the lights in the house are allowed to be on during B'dikas Chametz. Okay? Just might be surprising for some people. In our family, the lights were all out. You come home, all the lights go off, and it's just a bunch of candles and flashlights searching there. You're like, oh no, I can't see. But no, all the lights are allowed to be on. The purpose of the flashlight and the candle then is because general light, the same reason why we don't do B'dika during the day. We don't do B'dika during the day because sunlight comes in, but it misses corners. So flashlights and candles allow a person to get into the corners where chametz would otherwise be, but you can't just rely on the central light. So even if the lights are on in the room, we're still going to walk around with a candle or a flashlight to be able to hit the nooks and crannies, as they say. Okay, there's a machlekes hapaiskim when to start the B'dika, when to start doing the checking. Ideally, it's after Tzeis HaKochavim. Okay, it's going to be after Tzeis, after nightfall. If a person usually keeps, like for example, our family keeps as a chumrah 72 minutes after Shabbos. You don't need to wait for 72 minutes after Shkia to do the checking. Generally for this we follow Moshe Feinstein, who says at 50 minutes after Shkia or so. So whenever sundown is, remember Shkia is about 50 to 60, within an hour, close to an hour afterwards will be the proper time to start. There's a custom to put out 10 pieces of bread. The reason I put out 10 pieces of bread is not a game of hide and seek, and actually, even though you could make it a fun game of hide and seek, as I say every year, that's how it worked in the Tender family. The girls would hide it, and they would hide it in places that they know we're not going to check sometimes, right? Just to make sure we didn't get all 10, to show us that we didn't check the house well. But the purpose of putting it out is just to put into the general areas where chametz are, so that you don't forget to go into that area. Even the person doing the B'dika can put out the 10 pieces of bread, and should. There's no problem whatsoever. Just make sure the bread are spread out into each area of the home that it's normally, and the purpose is not to find it. The purpose is to go to that spot. Like the bread's a reminder, go downstairs to the basement, don't be lazy. Right? Because there's a piece of bread, you have to go down anyway, you got to get the bread, otherwise you're going to have chametz on Pesach in your house. Right? So now that I'm downstairs, I might as well check. It brings you into the area. Now, it's also there as well because to make sure it's not a bracha levatala. A lot of people clean their houses completely for chametz. Now I'm checking for chametz. Ain't no chametz in your house, buddy. Then you check for chametz. Give you a bracha levatala. That's not the reason why we put out 10 pieces of bread, so that we actually do find chametz. Which is interesting. If you ever do b'dikas chametz not the night of the 14th, you don't make a bracha. and you don't put out the 10 pieces of bread. So if I'm leaving my house, I'm going away for Pesach, and I'm not home that night, I'm doing the b'dikas chametz the night before, you don't put out 10 pieces of bread. There's no reason, because since I'm making a bracha anyway, it's not going to be a bracha lebatol. You don't need to put out the 10 pieces of bread. Now you can put something out to make sure you go to different spots, but there's no minhag anymore to put out the 10 pieces. The other thing with the 10 pieces is make sure each piece is smaller than the size of a kazayas. Don't put out bagels. Don't put out 10 bagels all over. Why? What happens if you lose one? I only found 9 out of 10. Gaval. Now you're stuck with a whole bagel somewhere in your house. But if you put out smaller than a kazayas, no, fine. It's not, it's not chashuv anyway. It could be mavatal. You could
take
notify.
pictures.
Okay. Huh?
I take pictures.
You take pictures. Okay.
If you have a dog, make sure you make a list.
If you have a dog, it could be inside his stomach. All right. All right. Next halacha. The Shulchan Aruch says a person should not sit down to a meal or work a half hour before Zman B'dika. Otherwise, you can get caught up in the work and push off the mitzvah. Also, a person is allowed to start. A person is allowed to keep learning Torah until it comes the time for checking. Okay. So to finish up a topic of Torah is permitted, but we don't start a new topic of Torah either once you reach the actual time. It's always better to check at night. Therefore, if a person's not going to be home, like we said, the night of the 14th, we'll check the night of the 13th before. We're not going to check daytime of the 14th. Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky also writes in Kavetz Halachas, there's no need to check clothing drawers for chametz. All right, you don't need to check clothing drawers, especially if you live in a house where, if you have kids who keep their secret shalach mana stash in their clothing drawer, yeah, they should be checked. But if you live in a house where there's a rule in the house and it's followed, the rule in the house is followed. No chametz in the clothing drawers, all right? And either the adults in the home are the ones who put away the clothing and they get washed, and you're not concerned that there's a Hershey Kiss inside the kid's pocket that got folded back up, without going into the washing machine. So there's no need to check clothing dressers. However, one should shake out pockets. And again, if the laundry was done, probably you could assume there's nothing in there. You probably shook out the pockets before. But pockets of clothing that are coats, for example, that's very common for something to be found on the side of a coat. Sometimes cuffs in the hem, an outside hem in the bottom of pant pockets or skirts. Also, you'll find all sorts of strange crumbs and snackers in there, how it got in there from some random guy's kiddush. So those also should be checked to make sure there's nothing in there. What about suitcases? So Shmuel also writes that if a person, again, you're the type of person where you're not putting your suitcase back into your garage, into your basement, into your storage area, without making sure there's no food, you don't need to start looking through all your suitcases again to make sure there is no chametz. However, if sometimes it could happen, in our family it does happen. I've taken out suitcase, little carry-on to go travel. It was put away and everything, and I open it up and I find 4 clicks, 7 Legos, the old Paw Patrol truck, and an Oreo cookie. I'm like, okay, somebody decided they don't want their own little trip in the basement, and they packed in everything that they'll ever need for their trip, including an Oreo cookie, and they were playing Let's Go on a Trip, right? So if you know that takes place, then it would be wise to check out, to search through one's suitcases. We mentioned with Timin Chamarev as well that there's this new development of people talking or scrolling on their phones the whole day. It's wise to check the back of the phone. Sometimes you take off the phone case, the back of a phone, you'll find some crumbs in the back, and that's another area that a person should be careful about. Any places, however, that I already put Pesach items, you don't need to check, because we know, we're careful, that we know that no chametz was brought there. Also, one area that we own that need to be checked is a person's car. This is an area that's sometimes overlooked. People eat in their car, and chametz is often brought into the car, so the car it's something that I own. And not only do I have to check my house, I have to check a car during b'dikas chametz. Now, you don't need to make a separate bracha, but you keep in mind when checking that night, I'm also going to go to my car and look it over.
Rings.
Any object that's difficult to move,
Some rings.
rings,
You need,
huh? Check your ring. Make sure there's no dough on it, no flour. I'm assuming people do that anyway, right?
I would-
No? Okay. All right. So check your rings. Make sure there's no dough in there. Any object that's difficult to move, like a stove or a fridge, doesn't need to be checked underneath. You don't need to start checking underneath unless there are wheels and it's not so hard, then it's wise to maybe just quickly pull it out, look behind, put it back. What happens if I'm visiting parents, I'm visiting siblings, I'm out of town, I'm not home? So anybody who shows up the 13th day of Nisan, okay, a day prior to B'dikas Chametz, or we'll call it, the 13th day of Nisan. So that night is going to be B'dikas Chametz. They're obligated to check their room with a bracha. You do make a bracha because that's their living space now. Like, let's say a married child coming to visit a parent, the parent gives them this bedroom. So this is your room. You're responsible now to check that room, and you've been there already for half a day, and you came from a trip, so you probably brought your your snacks, and there could be stuff that were taken out. So then there's a chance that there's chametz around. So you make a bracha, and you check you check that living area. However, a person who shows up to their host or the hotel the day before Pesach, then you know everything's been already cleaned out, there's nothing here, I'm only bringing my Pesach stuff, there's no chametz around, so then we just do a basic check, but no bracha is made, because there's really no chametz.
You already came Pesach, you came the 13th, but you Pesach.
Then the Charish do without a bracha, if there was no Pesach allowed, if there's no chametz allowed in the whole area, the whole general area. Also, one should, Shulchan Aruch writes, you should check a balcony. Anybody has like a porch, should check a porch for chametz, but backyards do not need to be checked. That's explicit as well. You don't need to look around your backyard because we know the birds, the animals, they go and they eat everything up. But balconies, sometimes animals refrain from, and they're more excited about what's going on in the grass and in the back area. Therefore, a balcony should be looked over, a porch should be looked over, a deck should be looked over, but a backyard does not need to be looked over. That is the general halachas of B'dikas Chametz. Now we'll get into beer chametz, and that is the mitzvah of burning chametz already started. So all of us, it's wise. We now have a little more, or approximately a week and a half till Pesach. It's wise that every time we eat anything, keep in mind that it's a mitzvah of beer chametz. We're destroying chametz, and we're making sure this chametz is not going to be in our house over Pesach. Mitzvah sichas kavana. Have in mind from here on forth that any chametz that I'm eating is my mitzvah of beer chametz. All you need to do is make sure it's not around by Pesach. You don't have to actually burn, which is why some people don't realize, like, oh, they make a big fire, you got to go and burn chametz. You don't need to burn chametz. Chametz has to be removed from our property prior to Pesach. If I haven't removed all the chametz from my property, now I go ahead and burn it to completely destroy it. But I don't need to acquire chametz. You don't need to go to Schnucks and buy a donut to throw into the fire. Okay? You don't need to do that. I don't have a donut around. I don't have a bagel around. You don't need to buy something to burn. If you have something, burn it. It's also interesting. I've seen this being done. It's interesting. Yiddishkeit has a place for everybody. Carpenters are sukkahs. Erev Pesach is the pyros, right? All the pyro guys. Everybody who's excited about fire. Erev Pesach. Lag Ba'omer, boom. Man, it's beautiful how the halacha has a very wide net to include everybody. One of the exciting things about burning chametz and Erev Pesach is how big this thing's going to burn. So what I've seen people do is they come with a box of chametz, and they take lighter fluid and they spray fluid onto this box, and they take the box and they chuck it in. Now, if a person does that, they didn't get a mitzvah, and here's why. Because only chametz that's fit for a dog to eat is forbidden to have on Pesach. So, what you want to do is throw the chametz in and then the lighter fluid. I'm not telling you not to use that. I'm not getting involved in the lighter fluid thing, but don't put lighter fluid on, because then it's no longer fit for a dog to eat, and it's no longer a mitzvah. So you don't have a mitzvah of burning it, then put it straight into the fire. Okay, that's a general thing to keep in mind for beer chametz. We also say kol chamira the night we check, and when we actually burn it, look inside your local favorite center for the nusach.
Don't you get the mitzvah by putting the lighter fluid on the chametz?
Okay, interesting. Okay, that's a Chaim has an interesting point. Okay, so then, but your rule, it's not the real way to express it. That's like spraying the side. That's a cheap way, but a good one.
You can't make a bracha after you do that, you know?
Right. Okay, well, we don't make a bracha on that either, but okay.
Well, okay.
All right, now we get to the Pesach Seder. Here we go. We've got 10 more minutes. We prepare for the Seder by setting the table before Yom Tov, so we can begin immediately before Shul. So ideally, we want to have the table set. However, don't expect other people to set the table. All right? If you want the table set when you come home from Shul, or it's time to start, do it yourself. I'm not talking to ladies, talking to the men. Right? Sometimes people are, oh, it says halacha, what's going on? The table should be set. Yes, so why didn't you do this yesterday? Why didn't you do it this morning? Right? But ideally, we want it to start, especially now, we changed the clock. It's going to be super duper late. when the Seder starts. We want to start as early as possible so we can fulfill our mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, telling over the story of Mitzrayim, especially if there's going to be younger people there, or such as us, who are also ready to fall asleep. The sooner the better. On Pesach night, every Yid is obligated in 5 mitzvahs. There's 5 mitzvahs that we're after at the Pesach Seder. 2 of the mitzvahs are biblical, 3 of the mitzvahs are rabbinic, are midrabanan. The 2 biblical mitzvahs that we're going to accomplish at the Pesach Seder are achilas matzah, eating matzah, and sipur yetzias mitzrayim. The 3 rabbinic mitzvahs are the daled kaisis, the 4 cups of wine, eating mar, and reciting the Hallel. Right. Now the second night, at the second Seder for us, it's all midrabanan, because the whole second night is midrabanan. So even achilas matzah and sipur yetzias mitzrayim also becomes 5 mitzvahs midrabanan, and you're going to see soon why this matters. The reason why I'm mentioning that matzah is on the second night rabbinic is because there could be a leniency in how much matzah needs to be eaten, a difference between the first night and the second night. When something's d'oraisa, biblical, we're more strict than when something is midrabanan. Okay, at the Pesach Seder, it's common for a married man to put on a kittel because A, it resembles angels, and B, it resembles shrouds. Now, according to the angels, it represents simcha. According to the second one, it's because why would it resemble shrouds? We're afraid we're getting too haughty. Usually, usually a yid is supposed to be modest. Modest. We don't do things in a fancy way. Pesach Seder, that's when you're supposed to go all out to show the royalty. Because Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim and brought us to a very high place. So these are the 2 opposites, the 2 contradictions that we're always living with as a yid, and that's what we need to grapple with. Okay, now somebody's in the year of Avela, somebody's in the year of mourning. One does not wear a kittel. However, if a person does so, we don't rebuke them. There's times where maybe you should. There's interesting conversation. You're not allowed to publicly mourn. So if it's going on a Yom Tiv, so if it's going to be noticeable to other people at the Seder that you're in mourning, maybe you should wear a kittel. Ask your local Rav for your specific situation. Okay, so we're sitting at the Pesach Seder, and the minhag is to start the Seder by singing what we'll call the order, the Seder, the menu of what's going to take place, like the programs. Everybody knows what's going to happen. We recite Kiddush. We take the first of the 4 cups. Everybody drinks from a cup as opposed to a standard Kiddush on a Shabbos or Yom Tiv where there's 1 cup and then I pour for everybody else. Everybody has to have their own cup because it's the first of the daled kaisis. So everybody has to drink that proper measurement. There's different customs whether everybody makes the Kiddush together or whether out loud, or whether one person makes the Kiddush and then everybody drinks. Whatever your custom is going to be fine. And as I say every year, the custom in the Tanner family is we all try to say the bracha out loud together, but once we get past the first 3 words, we all start giggling and half the people run to the kitchen because the cup spilled and they're not used to this. So if it happens in your house too, know what's going on in my house, it's fine. It's totally fine. Just get the take it. But this started already in my parents' house. I don't even feel bad that it's happening in my house. Everybody starts, people aren't used to all saying Kiddush together, and we're all laughing for no reason. But that's part of the minhag. Baruch Hashem. Okay, why do we drink the 4 cups? Because there's 4 expressions of Hashem delivering us from slavery. V'hitzesi, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti. Women or men without a woman in the house are going to light candles. When we light candles, we make a shechianu. So even women who made a shechianu on their candles, they are not going to say shechianu during the Kiddush. This is interesting. We're all going to make the bracha, but after making the bracha on Hagafen and on the Yom Tiv, then we make a shechianu. Women already made their shechianu on the Yom Tiv when they lit candles. So they don't say the shechianu, but they will answer amen to other people saying shechianu, which is interesting. There's a discussion in the Paiskim about whether or not to say shechianu. It could be a hefsek. You have no obligation to make that bracha. It could be an interruption between, but Rav Moshe holds that we do. So women should answer amen to that shechianu. Okay, how big of a cup do I need to have, and how much do I need to drink? So according to Rav Moshe Heinemann, the Kiddush cup has to hold at least 3.8 ounces. So if a person, this is actually wise, especially if you're using wine, you don't want to drink too much wine to start getting drunk and getting tired. But if you can find cups that are 4-ounce cups, that's amazing. You can find a good 4-ounce cup for adults or kids. People show up with 16-ounce cups and they start drinking, and they got to drink most of the cup. And now I'm drinking 10 ounces per cup. but because it looks good on the table or whatever, fine. We're gonna maybe put a cup and then a smaller one, but you don't need to drink so much. It just needs to be a cup that holds 4 ounces, okay? Now, we're supposed to drink rove kos, majority of a kos. So if let's say you have this 3.8 ounce, according to the Moshe, I'm just saying 4 because I don't know if everybody makes an exact 3.8 ounce cup. You might be able to find a 4 ounce cup on Amazon or Walmart or something. So we're at the koh, the 4 ounce cup.
Yeah.
Yishmak, all right. Save a couple for me, please. A couple means like 15. You know. Okay, but we'll talk about that afterwards. That's great. That's great. You have a 4 ounce cup, so you just need to drink Rav Kais. So you're drinking like 2.1 ounces per cup. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein he holds a little bit of a bigger measurement. The first night, which is Daraisa, he says a cup should be 4.4 ounces. Okay, and if it's not Daraisa, he has a much lower measurement of 2.9. According to this, you really on the second night for sure. Actually, both nights, because Dal Kaisis are Derabanan. So according to Rav Moshe, the first night Kiddush may be Daraisa for the first. But according to Rav Moshe, really 2 ounces.
Maybe Friday night.
1.5.
Friday night.
Friday night. Right, Friday night we Daraisa. So according to Rav Moshe, you only need 1.5 ounces on a Derabanan. Bottom line is, there's no reason why the Dal Kaisis should really be knocking us out if we don't prepare the cups properly. And also, Rav Shmuel writes that nowadays grape juice is as lechatchila as wine. A person doesn't need to hesitate from using grape juice. The lowest alcohol content to be considered wine is 4%. Once something's less than 4%, it's no longer considered wine. Now it's a drink in halacha. So you have like the 5% alcoholic wines, cream kal or joivin, I don't know, 5%, 6%. But if you have a wine that's, let's say, a 10% wine, so you can dilute it 2/3. Really dilute it 2/3 because you just need 4% of alcohol. So if you have 10% alcohol content and you make a mixture of 40% wine and 60% water, there's still going to be 4% alcohol content. Then you take that diluted alcohol content and pour it into your cup, and you only need to drink 2 ounces of that. Max, you're good to go. You drink a total of 8 ounces throughout the night of diluted wine. It doesn't need to be anything that's so, much. It's preferable to drink this amount all at one time. However, it does need to be completed Kedei Achilas Pras, anywhere between 2 and 9 minutes.
Some, like my boys want to do like wine and then go slower to grape juice. Which way is preferable to start with
Doesn't
grape juice, go up to wine, or
Same thing.
that?
Same thing.
Okay.
All right, now Kedem grape juice, I believe, according to the Star K, they did this study. Kedem grape juice, where you buy these big bottles in Costco, and it says how many clusters of grapes per bottle. It's pretty thick. It's a pretty strong grape juice. Right? They have lighter grape juice, they have stronger grape juice. The strong Kedem grape juice, I believe Rabbi Heinemann holds you could dilute it 50-50. If people are nervous about sugar content, you could also dilute it up to 50%, and it will keep the status of being chashuv as a grape juice. Okay, yeah.
Many of the, not the Kedem, the other varieties of Kedem grape juice are not reversible.
Okay,
if you
so
have-
remember that. Okay.
Yeah,
Be careful if you have people that
Right.
are nervous about Mahushal earth. Okay. Now we lean on our left side during Kaddish for 2 reasons. Number one, so most 90% of the world, according to my understanding, is right-handed. So we lean to our left. We have to lean to show royalty. So we lean to our left so that the right hand is available to use. We also lean to the left side because of danger. We want to make sure the drink enters the esophagus and not the windpipe. All right. So because of the second reason, even a left-handed person, it could be a little harder for us that we're going to the left and we have to use the same hand and no real support. But because of that, for safety, everybody leans on their left side. Women, Rav Shmuel writes, women are not obligated to lean during Kiddush. A woman certainly may lean. Rav Moshe Feinstein does write a woman should lean, or try to have a comfortable chair to show royalty. Leaning still shows royalty. I'm talking about Ashkenazi women. Sephardic women do lean always. Rav Moshe says Ashkenazi women should lean, but Shmuel Kamenetsky, again, according to Halachas, he says women were never makabel this minhag. We find this also by bowing down in shul, as we say every year, going all the way to the floor. A lot of women don't do that either. It's not a custom they accepted. But at the Pesach Seder, women do not need to lean, according to Rav Shmuel when doing Kaddish. And following the drink of Kaddish, the only thing that we should drink is water between now and the second cup, because a lot of the other things could technically, maybe if it's a hush of a drink, it could suffice as the second cup. Right? Let's say you ran out of wine, so you're allowed to use a chashav, a drink now. So we stay away from any other drink from the time I finish the first cup to the second cup, other than water. Okay, I'm gonna have to hold it here. Time's up, I think we covered a lot. Maybe we'll make a follow-up share. I wanted to at least cover the preparation for Pesach because we're a week and a half out and people are starting to prepare. But Halachas of the Seder, I don't think we have a follow-up planned right now. But I think there's enough for this. Then we can get into Halachas of Chol Hamoed, probably cover another 45-minute share. So I'll talk to Rav Moshe about good timing for that, as I mentioned. Thanks, everybody.